Subscribe to my YouTube channel, share it with your friends, and comment your thoughts. The moment the head chef spat blood onto the white tiles, everything changed. There was no warning, no cry for help. 1 second he was smirking as he dipped his spoon into her sample sauce. The next, he was clutching his throat, eyes bulging, coughing violently as something dark sprayed from his lips. The laughter stopped. The other chefs froze, their knives paused mid-chop. One of the line cooks dropped a hot skillet on his own foot and didn't even notice. A waiter screamed. Another ran for help, glass shattered. People rushed to the side of Chef Martin Galtier, Toronto's rising star in modern French cuisine. Within seconds, the white floor of La Maison de Lune looked like a scene from a crime thriller. Streaks of red, collapsed bodies, and the strange silence that comes after shock. In the middle of the chaos, she stood absolutely still. Maya Jalil, 33, quiet, unremarkable, forgettable to most. But not now. Not as she stood there in her ironed white uniform, hair neatly tied back, a small spoon still in her hand, the one Chef Martin had demanded she offer him, the same one he had mockingly dipped into her preparation while saying, "Let's see what our curry queen thinks is haute cuisine." They'd all laughed. God, they'd laughed. "Are you happy now?" Chef Martin had rasped moments before the paramedics arrived. His voice had been hoarse, hateful. "You poisoned us, didn't you?" Maya didn't answer. She calmly folded her apron, set it on the steel countertop like a priest placing a body into a tomb, and walked toward the exit. She would have left entirely if Daniel, the manager, hadn't intercepted her outside the walk-in freezer. "Not so fast," he said sharply. "Upstairs, now." She blinked. I don't care what you didn't do. You were the last one to touch that sauce, Maya. And you're not walking out of here until we sort this out." Upstairs, in a tiny office that smelled of old receipts and spilled espresso, Maya sat silently while Daniel paced, cursing under his breath. His phone kept buzzing. She could see it on the desk, texts from the owners, from reporters, from lawyers. "You've been nothing but trouble since you got here," he spat finally, breaking the silence. "Don't look so shocked." "I wash vegetables," she said softly. "I don't even have access to—" "You think I don't know that?" Daniel snapped. "But you just happen to have something special ready for the chef today? Just in time for the Michelin preview?" "I brought it in because I was proud of it. You told me to start showing initiative." "Initiative, not sabotage." She said nothing. But her mind wasn't quiet. She could hear them all again. Every joke, every sneer. "She smells like cardamom and onions, bro." "What is that?" "Her curry paste melted the fridge last week. Think she even knows what foie gras is?" "Let her cook, just not around people." Each laugh was a knife, subtle but deep. One by one they'd chipped away at her day by day. Not just in this restaurant, but all her life. She thought about her mother, now gone 6 years, a home cook who'd fed the hungry for free, a woman who whispered spices like prayers, who said turmeric was sacred and nutmeg could soften a broken heart. Maya had been taught to cook, not for applause, but for healing. That's why this moment cut so deep. "I think you should check the freezer," she said quietly. "What?" "The scallops. I noticed something off this morning. The ice packs were warm. If that's spoiled—" "Oh, now you're a food safety expert," Daniel barked, eyes wide. "You think I care what you noticed?" That was when the first police officer entered the office. Behind her, the head server collapsed outside the door, vomiting onto the hallway carpet. The next 48 hours blurred together like oil in water. Paramedics, interviews, freezer inspections. Maya's hands were swabbed. Her locker was opened. They even tested the remaining sauce she'd made, a simple curry leaf reduction meant to bring warmth and depth to a seared lamb loin. A family recipe, nothing more. But the media didn't care, and the headlines didn't wait. Michelin mayhem, chef collapses after mystery sauce tasting, pop-up poisoning, staff member under investigation. Maya, the mayhem maker. Toronto kitchen turns toxic. Someone found an old college photo of her. Hair frizzed from kitchen heat. Dark circles under her eyes. It circulated like wildfire. Curry Girl trended for a night. Some used it to defend her. Most didn't. Maya deleted all her accounts. By day 4, the lab reports were back. It wasn't poison. It was spoiled seafood. The scallops, just like she had warned. The walk-in freezer's power had been cut intermittently for over 48 hours, likely by a faulty circuit or sabotage. No one could say. But the damage had been done. La Maison de Lune suspended operations. Chef Martin remained in hospital. And Maya received a text from Daniel that simply said, "You're off the roster. Don't come back. No apology. No admission. Just silence." She spent the next week in her one-bedroom apartment above a halal butcher shop. She didn't cry, not out loud. She cooked rice, ate with her hands, read old recipes, but every bite tasted like shame. Until one night she found it, the jar, still sealed, still labeled in her grandmother's handwriting, the Revival blend. It was her grandmother's last gift, a rare mix of over 22 spices, smoky, bitter, bright, grounding. Maya had always been too afraid to use it. She unscrewed the lid now and inhaled deeply. It smelled like home, like who she used to be, like someone who didn't take betrayal lying down. The doorbell rang. She expected reporters. Instead, it was Camille. "Let me in," Camille said, almost out of breath. They hadn't spoken in years, not since culinary school. Not since the betrayal. Maya stared through the chain lock. "You have 5 seconds to explain. I know who tampered with the scallops." Maya opened the door. Camille stepped inside and handed her an envelope, thick with printed screenshots, kitchen logs, invoices, and one shockingly familiar email header. R.E. "Push the Curry Girl. She'll either crack or walk. Either way, we win." Maya sat down. The letter was from Chef Martin to sous chef Tobias, a plan to force Maya out, to preserve the kitchen culture, to make space for someone more brand-aligned. "They set you up," Camille said, tears forming in her eyes. "It was never about your food. It was about who you are." Maya's hands trembled as she flipped through each document. Emails mocking her accent. Kitchen notes with racial slurs. Tempered equipment reports. "They said you'd break," Camille added. "But you didn't. You stood there. You owned it, and I—" She swallowed hard. "I once betrayed you too." Maya raised her eyes. 4 years ago, the Michelin Paris trials, a chance for one rising star to cook their signature dish for the judges. Camille had presented Maya's recipe, and won. She never apologized, until now. "Why are you here?" Maya asked. "Because Martin's reputation is done. He might not survive. And I know you, Maya. You didn't poison them, but you're planning something far more powerful. Aren't you?" Maya said nothing. She stood, walked to the counter, and carefully poured the Revival blend into a new glass jar. Then sealed it. She looked at Camille with a calm intensity that made her flinch. "You have no idea what I'm planning." That night, Maya packed 2 bags, one with clothes and spices, one with something far older, her grandmother's cooking. Scrolls yellowed with time and tears. She took the train the next morning, southbound, 4 hours, then a cab into the valley. At sunset, she arrived at the place where everything began, her grandmother's house, nestled at the edge of a forgotten Ontario forest. The roof sagged. The well had dried. But the kitchen pulsed with memory. She lit incense, scrubbed the floors, cleaned the counters, lined her spices in neat rows, and she cooked. For the first time in years, she cooked not to impress, not to survive, but to transform. 3 months later, in a quiet corner of downtown Toronto, a small pop-up food stand appeared in an alley no one remembered. No name, no sign, just the smell of fire-roasted clove chicken, slow-braised lentils, and saffron rice infused with something indescribable. Within a week, people whispered about it. Within 2, they lined up before dawn. Within a month, the very critics, who had once mocked her flavor, profiles were begging for more. They ate, and many of them cried. One reviewer wrote, "Whoever this cook is, they're not just feeding your stomach, they're feeding your soul's darkest hunger." One night after closing, a woman approached the stall. Elegant, mysterious. She didn't speak. She only handed Maya a sealed envelope, then walked away. Inside was a black invitation card with gold script: Michelin Confidential, Level 3 Tasting Committee, Private Evaluation. Attached was a handwritten note. "We've tasted 100 stars. None made us weep. Yours did." Maya looked up from the card, heart pounding, but the woman was gone, just like the shame, just like the fear. Now only the fire remained. Rain fell in quiet sheets the night she stepped through the tall glass doors. Maya Jalil, dressed in a plain black dress, no jewelry, no entourage, walked into the marble-floored lobby of the Amaranth, a members-only chef's tasting facility, so elite most people didn't even know it existed. She passed between velvet ropes, past a wall where plaques displayed only 3 words: vision, fire, truth. Her invitation had been accepted. Not just accepted, fast-tracked. She wasn't a celebrity, not even formally invited under her name. The card had simply read, "Bring what cannot be stolen." That's what Maya carried in the battered duffel strapped across her chest, a single spice tin. Inside were only 5 ingredients, and none of them could be found in any Michelin supplier catalogue. They were hand-crushed, sun-dried, and blessed by a woman who died whispering, "Cook for the ones who suffer in silence." Maya's fingers trembled as she handed her invitation to the concierge. "Chef Jalil," the man said with a bow, "your kitchen is prepped. You will have 3 hours. The tasting begins at 7 p.m. sharp." She nodded. No small talk, no pleasantries, just like she wanted. The kitchen at the Amaranth was almost eerily sterile. Matte steel surfaces gleamed under track lights. State-of-the-art combi ovens blinked like sleeping robots. Everything was clean, cold, and expensive, the opposite of everything Maya had been raised in. But as soon as she laid her spice tin on the countertop, the air changed. Even the sous chef assigned to assist her, a woman named Lena, with eyes that seemed too kind for such a cutthroat world, paused when the first wave of saffron and coriander hit the air. "You're the one from the pop-up," Lena whispered. Maya glanced up. "You've tasted my food," Lena smiled, a quiet warmth behind her seriousness. "Twice. Once on my birthday, once after my sister's funeral. You made me believe food still had meaning." Maya nodded once. Then she got to work. Each of the 5 judges at the Amaranth sat behind one-way glass. Their identities were concealed. Their reactions were not. A silent camera captured every bite, every blink, every subtle motion. Maya prepared 5 dishes. She didn't look at recipe cards. She didn't measure. She remembered. The first dish, black cumin and pomegranate soup, was for her mother's hunger. The second, a charred mustard greens and coconut risotto, was for her grandmother's laughter. The third, an interlude, was a simple bite of lemon-pickled onion on turmeric leaf. Then the main, fire-seared lamb, marinated in her grandmother's revival blend, served on bone broth rice with a single clove caramel reduction. And finally, the dessert, ash-rub mango with cardamom soil and sugared rose petals. She plated each item like a painter, coaxing light from darkness. At 6:59 p.m., she stepped away from the counter and said only, "Service." Then she waited. The first judge, identified only as V, didn't blink through the first course. She didn't speak either, but the way her spoon hesitated over the last drop of soup said more than words. The second judge, K, Mike sniffed the risotto, raised an eyebrow, and said to no one in particular, "This smells like home." Except I never had one. By the time they reached the lamb, one of them had silently wept, another had taken off their glasses, cleaned them twice, and finally muttered, "There is no flaw." They didn't ask her about technique, not once. Instead, the final comment came from the judge in the middle, a man whose name she would later learn was Henrik Voss, 3-time Michelin board chairman. He leaned into the mic and simply said, "She just rewrote the standard." Later, in the darkened elevator back down to street level, Maya leaned her head against the wall. Her hands still smelled like fenugreek and smoke. She didn't cry, but her soul did. Not for winning, but for everything that had to be burned for her to get here. 2 weeks later, the news broke at dawn. Maya Jalil, the secret chef behind Toronto's mystery food revolution, named Michelin Revelation of the Year. She served healing on a plate, and the world fell silent. Every food journalist, influencer, and brand suddenly remembered her name. Even the trolls, even Chef Martin Galtier, now fully recovered and trying to rebuild his shattered reputation, posted on LinkedIn. In hindsight, perhaps I underestimated her. Greatness is often disguised as simplicity. The comments dragged him mercilessly. Maya didn't respond. Not online, not on interviews, not even to the networks offering her own show. Instead, she opened a booking site, no photos, no menu. Just one sentence, a 5-course journey through ruin, memory, and rebirth. Book if you're ready to taste the truth. And underneath, $1,000 per seat. Pay only if you feel healed. The night that changed everything. The guest list was secret, but Maya knew some of them. Some had laughed at her. Some had betrayed her. Some had eaten her food and still dismissed her, and one, Camille, had helped her rise again. All were there. At 6:30 p.m., Maya stood at the head of a single, candlelit table. 10 chairs. The room was quiet, warm, scented with slow-braised saffron and smoked cumin oil. A string quartet played something aching and low. "I will not speak during the meal," Maya said softly. "But you should know this. Not all of you will walk away unchanged." Camille shifted in her seat. A man at the far end, Maya recognized him as a food editor who had once called her a cultural hobbyist playing in haute cuisine, smirked. He stopped smirking after the 3rd course. Because something was happening. As each dish arrived, perfectly timed, perfectly balanced, memories seemed to rise unbidden. A woman sobbed into her napkin. Another whispered, "This was my grandmother's scent. How could she know that?" One man stood up during dessert, walked out silently, and later wired Maya $10,000 with the note, "You fed me the forgiveness I never gave my sister." Only one person didn't touch their plate, Tobias, sous chef Tobias, the man who'd helped Martin sabotage her, the one who'd signed off on the scallop storage. He stared at the main course for almost 30 minutes. Didn't speak, didn't blink. Then he did something Maya didn't expect. He stood, walked toward her, and knelt beside her chair. I'm sorry," he said, voice cracking. "We thought we were protecting the brand. I didn't know who you were. I didn't see it. I didn't want to see it." Maya looked at him, calm, still, a river beneath ice. She didn't say a word, but she reached into her apron, pulled out a small tin of Revival blend, and set it on the table. "Take this," she said. "Taste it when you're ready to see everything you've buried." He bowed his head and left in silence. The next morning, the press exploded. Secret healing dinners. Redemption on a plate. The woman who fed the people who tried to break her. And yet, Maya kept disappearing. She refused brand deals, refused magazine shoots. When Vogue asked her to model with her spices, she declined and sent them a copy of her grandmother's handwritten notes instead. One last betrayal then, just as her name was becoming legend. It happened. Camille, The only friend who had stood by her in the early days, the woman who had helped expose Martin, was revealed to have sold exclusive back-of-house videos to a streaming network for a documentary titled Behind the Spice. Maya's secret rise. She'd included private recipe footage, her grandmother's scrolls, even secret recordings of their conversations, and worst of all, the show twisted the story, made it about a pitiful, rejected woman who clawed her way to revenge. Maya sat alone in her kitchen, watching the trailer. No warning, just betrayal. Again. But this time, she didn't disappear. She picked up her phone, dialed a number she had never used. The call went to voicemail. She left a simple message. "You don't know me yet, but your kitchen once almost broke me. Now I'd like to invite you to mine. One night, 10 courses, no masks. Come taste the truth you never allowed me to tell." Then she hung up. The voicemail belonged to Michelin's chief judge, who had personally voted to exclude her from the shortlist years earlier for being too culturally raw. The voicemail had been delivered at 11:47 p.m. Maya knew she wouldn't get an answer until morning, if at all. Yet when she awoke, there was an email waiting. Subject: "You have my attention." From Michelin chief judge, Alexandre Montclair. Maya's hands shook as she read the message. "Ms. Jalil, your dinner invitation is accepted. Tomorrow night, the Montclair estate. You will cook. I will judge. And this time, not behind a glass wall." Châtelet, Montclair estate. It was a name whispered among chefs as the final fortress of old-world gastronomy. A sprawling mansion on the outskirts of Paris. An empire built on tradition, exclusivity, and silence. And for decades, Alexandre Montclair had been its iron-hearted gatekeeper. Maya sat still, the weight of that email pressing on her chest. This was the moment. Hours later, Maya arrived in Paris by dawn, under a sky still bruised with early clouds. She'd never been to the Montclair estate, though she'd heard every rumor. The iron gates stood taller than a man, flanked by statues carved from grey stone, the faces weathered and unreadable. Black limousine waited. The driver took her bags and said simply, "Monsieur Montclair is expecting you." Inside, the leather seats smelled of cedarwood and quiet power. Maya stared out the window at the manicured gardens, the fountains frozen in mid-spray, and the kitchen wing that gleamed like a cathedral. The estate kitchen, unlike the Amaranth, Montclair's kitchen, was a relic, but a perfect one. Copper pots hung from the rafters. Marble counters were cracked from centuries of use. An open fire crackled beneath a massive cast-iron stove. Alexandre Montclair stood by the fire when Maya entered, a tall, thin man with steel-grey hair and eyes that looked like chipped ice. "No glass," he said, nodding to the table set. "In the corner." "Tonight we judge as equals." Maya set down her bag. "I didn't come to plead," she said. "I came to cook." Montclair smiled, thin and sharp. "Then show me your truth." The first course, Maya reached into her apron, pulling out a folded parchment. It was one of her grandmother's lost recipes, a blend of spices and memories no one outside her family had ever tasted. Montclair watched intently as she prepared the sunrise stew, a dish her grandmother once said could heal even the deepest wounds. The stew simmered with golden turmeric, slow-cooked root vegetables, and a rare smoked pepper from a distant mountain range. When Montclair took the first spoonful, his icy expression softened. "It's honest." As the courses progressed, Montclair challenged Maya with questions, sometimes pointed, sometimes cryptic. "Why do you cook with ghosts? What is the price of authenticity in a world built on illusion? Is revenge ever just?" Maya answered with food. Each dish told a story: survival, love, loss, forgiveness. When she served the final course, a delicate dessert called silent ashes, made with charred figs and honeycomb, Montclair paused longer than usual. "Tell me," he said, voice rougher than before. "Why did you come back?" Maya's voice was steady. "Because I was never really gone." The unexpected guest suddenly, the heavy oak door creaked open. A woman stepped inside, dressed in simple linen but carrying an air of quiet power. "Grandmother?" Maya whispered, frozen. The woman smiled, but it wasn't her grandmother. It was Lena, the sous chef from the Amaranth. Maya's heart raced. "I'm sorry," Lena said, "but there's more you need to see." She handed Maya a small, worn notebook. "It belonged to my mother. She was a friend of your grandmother's." Inside were pages filled with handwritten notes, sketches of herbs, and a hidden recipe marked the Resurrection Sauce. Montclair's eyes widened. That recipe was lost decades ago. If you cook it, it could change everything. A twist of betrayal as Maya leafed through the notebook. Her phone buzzed, a text from Camille. "I never wanted to hurt you, but the documentary, it's out of control. We need to talk. Tonight. Montclair Estate." Maya looked up. Montclair's gaze was unreadable. "You invited her?" Maya asked. He nodded slowly. "Everyone who matters will be here." The tension in the room thickened like a rising storm. When Camille entered, her eyes flickered between Maya and Montclair. "I'm sorry," Camille began. "I thought I was doing the right thing, but the producers twisted everything." Maya swallowed her anger. "I invited you to face the truth," she said, "not to rewrite it." Montclair cleared his throat. "We will dine, then decide." The decision, the last course was served. Montclair pushed back his chair, the flicker of firelight casting shadows across his face. "You have skill," he said. "More than skill. You have soul." He paused, then surprised everyone. "Your grandmother's recipes will be honored in Michelin's next guide." Maya's breath caught. "But only if you allow me to mentor you, to shape you within our world." It was an offer no one expected. The final revelation. As the guests prepared to leave, Montclair pulled Maya aside. "Your grandmother was not just a cook," he said. "She was a revolutionary." He handed her an old locked box. Inside was a collection of medals, faded letters, and a small tarnished Michelin star. "Her legacy is your inheritance. Protect it well." Maya felt the weight of generations settle in her hands. She wasn't just cooking food, she was rewriting history. The early morning light filtered softly through the curtains of Maya's apartment, but her mind was anything but peaceful. The Montclair Estate's locked box lay on the kitchen table, unopened since the night before. She traced the faded letters on the old medals inside her hand again and again, as if the worn paper could somehow whisper the secrets of her grandmother's legacy. Yet, even as she prepared to accept the offer to join the Michelin world, to become a protégé of Alexandre Montclair, an icy dread curled in her stomach. Camille. Her voice from the night before still echoed in Maya's ears. "I thought I was doing the right thing." "There's more you need to know." What did Camille hide? What truth had she buried beneath the tangled web of lies and betrayals? The phone call. Before she could decide what to do next, her phone rang. The caller ID was unknown. "Hello?" A calm, unfamiliar voice said, "Ms. Jalil, this is Inspector Rivière from Paris Police. We have new information about Camille's past you should know." Maya's heart skipped. "Please," the inspector continued, "come to the station as soon as possible. It concerns your safety and the documentary." At the police station, the sterile room smelled of cold coffee and fluorescent lights. Inspector Rivière handed Maya a thick folder. "Camille has been under investigation for months," he explained, "not just for the documentary, but for fraud and manipulating people connected to the culinary world." Maya's hands trembled. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Because Camille was careful. She built trust." "But for what purpose?" Maya flipped through the documents. Photos of Camille with producers, contracts forged, and worst of all, recordings where Camille admitted to fabricating parts of the documentary to boost drama. The betrayal stung like a blade. Confrontation back. At her apartment, Maya's phone buzzed again. It was Camille. "Please, Maya, you have to listen. I never wanted to hurt you. I had no choice." Maya's voice cracked, but she was firm. "Then tell me everything. No more lies." Camille's voice broke. "I was desperate. My family was drowning in debt. The documentary was supposed to be my way out, to get noticed, to make money. But it spiraled. Did you ever care about the truth? About me?" "I did," Camille whispered. "That's why I invited you to Montclair. I wanted to make things right." Maya swallowed the pain. "Then prove it." The final dish Montclair's offer still stood, a mentorship that could change everything. Yet Maya knew she couldn't walk this path alone. She invited Camille. Together, they would cook the legendary resurrection sauce, the lost recipe hidden in her grandmother's notebook. It was said to be a dish so powerful it could heal even the deepest scars, but only if cooked with truth and forgiveness. The cooking in Montclair's old kitchen, the air was thick with tension and anticipation. Maya and Camille worked side by side, every spice measured, every flame tended with care. As the sauce simmered, memories spilled, laughter and tears mingled. The fire crackled, reflecting the fragile hope growing between them. The tasting Montclair entered quietly, watching. He took a spoonful of the resurrection sauce and closed his eyes. This is the heart," he said softly. "Not just of the recipe, but of healing." Tears filled Maya's eyes. She looked at Camille, who nodded, silently asking for forgiveness. The lesson. That night, Montclair announced to the culinary world that Maya Jalil would be honored with a Michelin star, not just for her cooking, but for her courage. In the crowd, Camille stood quietly, having chosen to step back and face her consequences. Maya's final words in her acceptance speech resonated far beyond the room. "Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find who you really are. And in the ashes of betrayal, we find the strength to rise, not alone, but together." Epilogue. Months later, Maya's restaurant flourished. She had built a team, a family bound by trust and shared dreams. And in a quiet corner of the kitchen, a framed photo of her grandmother smiled down, a reminder of the past, a beacon for the future. Maya wasn't just a chef. She was a storyteller, a healer, a star reborn. The end.